el mismo que nos ataca a nosotros en nuestras costas y en nuestras tierras, el mismo que ataca a los demás. Y por eso decimos y proclamamos que con combatientes cubanos podrá contar el movimiento revolucionario en cualquier rincón de la tierra.
Fidel was engaged in this worldwide movement to really overthrow governments from Zanzibar to Salvador to Nicaragua, all over Central Africa. He helped in Vietnam, in Libya, in Algeria, in Syria. They had training camps for guerrillas all over Cuba and at different parts of the world. I don't think anyone has any idea of what a big thing Fidel's adventures and ambitions led him to in the 1960s and even into the 70s.
While Castro built a world revolutionary movement, Che Guevara became its most visible advocate.
Que han decidido empezar a escribir ellos mismos para siempre su historia, porque esta gran humanidad.
Eloquent and idealistic, the dashing Guevara had acquired a reputation and a following second only to Fidel's.
There was simply not enough space by the mid-60s for both the gigantic personalities of Fidel Castro and Ernesto Che Guevara in Cuba. And the one that was going to leave was Che.
Fidel's relationship with Che is the same as with anyone else. You're useful to him one day and not the next. Che tells Fidel he's in Cuba only to train to go to other countries, and Fidel tells him, if that's what you want.
Disguised as a businessman, Che Guevara arrived in the Bolivian Andes in November 1966. He and a small band of Cubans hoped to ignite a continental revolution, which would transform the Andean mountains into the Sierra Maestra.
The American nation cannot, must not.
By then, President Lyndon Johnson was determined to stop the spread of communism.
Of another communist government in the Western Hemisphere.
And the Soviet leadership, who had never fully supported Castro's revolutionary adventures, decided to put an end to them.
Khrushchev is gone in October of '64. Leonid Brezhnev takes over. His number one priority is arms control negotiations with the United States. And these damn little Cubans are really ruining everything because the Americans say we can't start arms control until you Soviets bring these guys under control. This was the ultimatum that Brezhnev gave Castro in roughly April of '67. We're not exactly sure of the date. This is in a letter to Castro. If they didn't rein in their revolutionary activities, Brezhnev would give the green light to Lyndon Johnson to go into Cuba.
Bolivia, July 1967, Che wrote in his diary. The negative aspects prevail, including the failure to make contact with the outside. We are down to 22 men, 3 of whom are disabled, including myself. For months, Che complained of being betrayed by Bolivia's Soviet-run Communist Party and of having no contact with Havana.
The interesting thing about Che in Bolivia was that he was in the eastern high Andes, which are readily accessible for anyone who knew where he was. Fidel knew where he was, but he'd cut off all radio contact with Che in Bolivia. And I went there, went in his footsteps, talked to his guerrilla group. He could have sent someone up from Paraguay. He could have sent someone out from La Paz, the capital. There was no contact. Che is left wandering around this very wild, high jungle.
On October 8th, hungry, sick, cut off from the outside world, Che Guevara and his handful of guerrillas were surrounded by the Bolivian Rangers, an elite army unit trained in counterinsurgency by the United States. Che was taken prisoner. The next day, he was executed. In death, Che Guevara would become an icon of revolution. As the prospects of world revolution dimmed, Fidel Castro turned his energies back toward transforming Cuban society. He set out to build communism in record time, faster than the Soviet Union, even China. Fidel would even try to mold a new man, selfless, dedicated, uncorruptible. There were some very real achievements. Children in Cuba did not go hungry. The sons and daughters of peasants and workers received a free education, one day becoming the engineers and doctors of revolutionary Cuba. Hospitals and clinics were built in the farthest reaches of the island, the foundation of a system that would eventually deliver health care to all Cubans. Prostitution and gambling virtually disappeared. But Cuba's socialist economy bordered on disaster. The U.S. embargo, the flight of managers and technicians to the United States, and economic mismanagement had left factories idle, store shelves empty, basic goods strictly rationed. La cola, the waiting line to purchase whatever was available, became the staple of daily life. Cubans called Fidel El Señor Habrá, Mr. There Will Be, and joked that if Spanish lacked a future tense, Castro would be rendered speechless. But Cubans